the Justice Department to drop that lawsuit. It was dismissed, so it's not subject to a court review. What conversations did you have with Mr. Ballard? President Trump has embodied it, and we have a record. It is a public record of his express instructions that certain individuals be investigated. The night before James Comey's indictment, you had dinner with the President of the United States. Pretty intimate group.
That escalated fast. Senator Blumenthal opens with accusations of political weaponization. Bondi fires back with one of the most personal takedowns we've seen in a congressional hearing. Dinner photos, selective prosecutions, and then the nuclear line. You lied about your service. This hearing wasn't just oversight, it was a political knife fight.
Senator Blumenthal.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just so the American people understand, this issue of weaponization of justice goes to the core of the integrity of our criminal justice system. And I think we can all agree that no individual, no group should be targeted simply because they are a political opponent or because the President of the United States has some personal animosity toward them. You've just said that President Trump is the most transparent president in history, tragically and chillingly. You may be right when it comes to criminal justice, because far from ending weaponization of justice, I would submit, Madam Attorney General, that President Trump has embodied it. And we have a record. It is a public record of his express instructions that certain individuals be investigated. The Attorney General of New York, Tish James, my colleague Adam Schiff, the former CISA director, Chris Krebs, the DHS former Chief of Staff, Miles Taylor. There's a list. And he has been transparent. In fact, 5 days before the indictment of James Comey, he put this post up as instructions to you. He didn't mince words. He was very open and public that you should indict James Comey and others because they are guilty as hell. No more delay now. 5 days before you indicted.
This sets the battlefield. Blumenthal wants viewers to see Bondi as the executor of Trump's political revenge. Using posts, instructions, dates, every piece is a loaded accusation of loyalty over law.
Or grand jury, at your instructions, indicted James Comey. I'd like to know from you what conversations you've had with President Trump about the indictment of James Comey.
Senator, I am not going to discuss any conversations I have or have not had with the President of the United
you
States.
see that
You're
post?
an attorney, you have a law degree, and you know that I'm not going to do that. I also find it fascinating, because I'll keep fighting to ensure that law enforcement and the judicial process move forward without political interference. No one is above the law, not even the president. That's a quote from you, Senator Blumenthal, in 2017.
Well, let me ask you then, when you saw that
No
post,
one is above the law. That was your quote.
When you saw that post, did you talk to anybody in the White House?
I am not going to discuss any conversations I have, nor any investigations,
So
nor
you are unwilling
any
to tell
pending
this committee
cases.
about conversations with the White House
And if I
regarding
may
James
continue,
Comey's indictment.
and if I may
Let me show
continue,
you a picture.
James Comey was indicted by one of the most liberal grand juries in the United States.
The night before James Comey's indictment.
Bondi refuses every attempt to corner her. The tension rises. The picture becomes a metaphor. She's physically close to power, so was she politically close too?
You had dinner with the President of the United States. Pretty intimate group.
Actually, there were a lot of people there that night. That's a great
James
picture.
Comey discussed at that dinner?
I love that picture. That's a great picture. And there were a lot of people there that night. I think the entire cabinet was there.
did you discuss James Comey with the President of the United States? He was sitting just to your left.
Well, 2 seats down, yes, 2 seats down. And I am not going to discuss any
I'm going to take
conversations
that
I've
as a
had or not
yes,
have with the
because
President
the
of the
American
United
public
States.
is entitled to know, Madam Attorney General.
The entire cabinet was at that dinner,
whether
too,
you took instructions from President Trump after he told you very directly to indict James Comey, which is weaponization of the Department of Justice.
Oh,
You
wait,
know,
wait, wait.
I want to agree with my colleague, Senator Hawley, that weaponization of our justice system must end. That's the reason that I proposed legislation, and I challenge him and my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to join me in legislation that would create a statutory right of action for people who are selectively or maliciously prosecuted for political reasons. It would codify your manual, the Department of Justice manual, on political prohibitions against political considerations in charging decisions and prohibit the White House from intervening.
Classic move. Shift the lens. If they're accusing her of favoritism, she counters with Democratic hypocrisy. This is where the hearing becomes less about Comey and more about who controls the narrative.
President Trump and any other president from intervening in charging decisions. It would make reforms to the grand jury process. You just said this grand jury was liberal. We should reform the grand jury process to ensure that the government is not abusing its power and authority, and it will require transparency and accountability reforms at DOJ so that you will and other attorneys general be held accountable for these kinds of decisions. Will you join me in supporting that kind of reform?
Senator Blumenthal, I find it so interesting that you didn't bring any of this up during President Biden's administration when he was doing everything to protect Hunter Biden, his son. And I think you just saw what Director Radcliffe just released.
You know, this is an effort to be positive.
If I can finish
and
answering the question, I'm not going to
Madam
yell
Attorney
over you. I'm not going to get in the gutter with you. But information that the Biden administration told them not to investigate Hunter Biden's involvement with Ukraine. I'm not going to be lectured to you about integrity by someone who lied about being in the military just to be elected a senator.
The merger between Hewlett-Packard Enterprises and Juniper Network was settled. You authorized the settlement. It was the subject of a lawsuit to block it. The settlement produced virtually no concessions from Hewlett-Packard. It was a settlement that prompted criticism from the Antitrust Division. Did you authorize that settlement yourself?
Blumenthal questions whether she shields connected corporations. Bondi stays cool, procedural, refusing to give any personal accountability.
As I stated earlier, Gail Slater is doing an incredible job running the antitrust unit. And as I stated earlier, that is still a pending matter. As you should know with a law degree,
did you not,
that all mergers. If I can finish answering the question.
I'm going to,
if I could finish. No, I'm answering the question.
Because my time is limited.
No, well then don't ask me a question. So,
let me just ask you,
I said, you have a law degree. You know that not only are mergers agreed upon, but they have to go to a court of law to be approved. It's a multi-step process. And as I said earlier, that is still pending. And I have full faith in Gail Slater.
And Ms. Slater reportedly objected to the settlement.
Reportedly.
And moreover, two of her top officials were fired, Roger Alford and Bill Schinner. Did you authorize and direct those firings after they objected to the settlement?
I am not going to discuss personnel matters or pending litigation in my office.
Let me ask you about another merger. The merger involving two home health care agencies on favorable terms, likely to drive up costs for millions of America. The Transportation Department's rule to provide compensation to travelers impacted by airline-caused flight delays, which was canceled. The merger of Skydance and Paramount, after Paramount's ownership took a number of steps favorable to the president. These kinds of mergers belie the claims that President Trump himself has made, that this administration will stop big corporate mergers that ultimately benefit the owners of those corporations rather than consumers or ordinary, everyday Americans.
Senator,
and let me ask you
Boy,
about
you just listed, you just gave a
Well,
list
let me just
of
finish.
many mergers.
I have a
Can
question
you
for
talk
you.
to me about the issue with these mergers?
I do have a question. In the merger that took place,
Which
that was
merger? You've
approved
listed many.
involving American Express GBT.
This is the moment everything snaps. Bondi abandons scripted answers. She turns it personal, dragging Blumenthal's past Vietnam claims into the spotlight. The hearing erupts into moral combat, integrity versus credibility.
I understand that Brian Ballard, longtime backer and head of the law firm where you worked, was instrumental in lobbying the Justice Department to drop that lawsuit. It was dismissed, so it's not subject to a court review. What conversation did you have with Mr. Ballard?
Senator Blumenthal, I cannot believe that you would accuse me of impropriety when you lied about your military service.
I am
you
not
lied.
asking
You
you.
admitted you
I am
lied
not
to be
accusing you
elected
of
a U.S. senator.
impropriety. I'm
You
asking
lied.
you
How
about
dare you? I'm a
conversations
career
with
prosecutor.
Mr.
Don't you
Ballard,
ever challenge my integrity.
had
I have
apparently-
abided by every ethics standard. Do not question my ability to be fair and impartial as Attorney General, and anything
You'll
with
answer that
my
question to
former
another of my
firm,
colleagues.
Ballard Partners.
Thank you.
Senator Lee has asked for the chair.
Yeah, just wanted to note for the record, the Paramount merger that he referenced was not within the Department of Justice's ambit. That was at the FCC, not the Department of Justice. Attorney General Bondi would have had nothing to do with that. Thanks.
And that was why I asked Senator Lee.
The words spoken in that hearing ring with certainty, yet something crucial feels missing. The performance of outrage replaces the pursuit of truth. The questions about immigration in Chicago were not asked to seek real answers, because when answers were attempted, they were brushed aside. The goal seemed not to understand, but to accuse. It feels like fear is being wielded as a political tool, shaping a narrative that divides neighbors and turns complex human stories into blunt talking points. People who live and work in Chicago deserve more than that. Law enforcement officers who do their jobs every day without fanfare deserve more than that. Dialogue about crime, sanctuary policies, and border challenges must be grounded in facts rather than heightened suspicion. The repeated references to terrifying cartels and brutal cases serve to inflame emotions, yet they ignore the countless immigrants who contribute to our economy and community. The suggestion that an entire city welcomes criminals is not only misleading, it is harmful. Every sanctuary jurisdiction still prosecutes violent crime. The choice to oversimplify a national issue into a local villain erodes trust. It encourages the audience to see some communities as threats rather than fellow Americans. Real solutions never grow from seeds of division. The commentary then leaps to another battlefield, pivoting sharply from border security to political vendettas. This fast shift reveals the true purpose of the performance. The concerns raised about investigations targeting Donald Trump are framed as proof of a grand conspiracy. A few selective facts are lifted from a complicated history and presented as if they reveal the entire story. The audience is expected to forget that investigations into Russian interference in 2016 were launched under Republican leadership. They are expected to ignore that courts and juries have reviewed evidence independently. The complexity of due process collapses into a single script line. The system is unfair, and one man is the victim. The details omitted are as influential as those included. Legal standards exist to protect citizens from wrongful surveillance and false charges. Those standards require that evidence be tested, not theatrically rejected. When officials refuse to engage with legitimate oversight by saying they cannot comment on ongoing matters, that is not necessarily evidence of guilt or corruption. It can be the very thing that upholds the fairness of the process. Describing public servants as part of a dark plot corrodes faith in the institutions that protect democracy. The justice system becomes a punching bag rather than a safeguard. The attack on law enforcement here stands in stark contrast to the earlier demand that cities unquestioningly cooperate with federal agencies. Support for the rule of law should not depend on whether investigations target political allies or opponents. If justice is only respected when it shields your side, it ceases to be justice at all. The audience is left with an impression of chaos, danger, and betrayal. The style is accusatory, the delivery confident. Yet confidence does not equal truth. Our country deserves leaders who rise above partisan warfare, who allow facts to speak louder than fear, and who acknowledge nuance rather than bury it. The loudest voice in the room is not automatically the most honest. Political theater might win camera time, yet it will never build the trust required to solve real problems.
The true power of a democracy lies in care for the whole nation, not just the portions that cheer for one team. Criticism has a vital role in our system, though it must be grounded in sincerity and fairness. The challenges at our border need thoughtful reform. Concerns about federal investigations deserve transparent oversight. These issues are far too important to be tossed into a blender of outrage and served as a simplified narrative of heroes and villains.